Leave it to Toga to spark me to actually get on here and do impressions for My Hero Academia again. I'm not sure exactly when the last time that I did an impressions on this series was. I think it was during their mock battles that they were doing for their classes, which I think leaves me at about episode 101 or episode 13 of season 5 of My Hero Academia. I'm all the way up to episode 21 of the fifth season, or episode 109 if you're going by Crunchyroll. I'm not sure why they just add them all up, but that's not here or there. But this is my impressions on the episodes, so let's jump into it. Yeah, I think a lot of my issues with doing impressions on a weekly basis for this show is the fact that I kind of have lost my excitement for the series for quite a while now. And I think it really kind of centers mostly around the fact that this whole Liberation Army arc they were doing wasn't all that interesting. Just kind of seeing Hawks working around the background, trying to find out about some Liberation Army. And I'd heard they kind of swap things around at some point, and I really wasn't sure exactly why they did that at this point, just because they're going to cover both of them anyways. I'm guessing it's just because they felt like this Liberation Army arc was the least interesting out of both of them, and so they wanted to end with a nice bang by doing the villain arc afterwards. Either that or it's going to stop at some point before the villain arc ends, and they're going to want to do a movie. That's all I can think of. Is there's probably some kind of lineup to have a movie put in there, which is kind of unfortunate because me as a viewer, not a manga reader, even though I did hear that they did do a swapping of arcs, I felt it because I didn't know what the hell was going on. Like, what is the Liberation Army? Who are they after? What is Hawks doing? Who's the Liberation Army? What is this group? Is it part of the main heroes groups? I don't understand what's going. There's heroes in the Liberation Army. Is this a good group and it's supposed to be bad? I couldn't understand a single thing that was happening, and it isn't until you get into the My Villain Academia arc that I think sparked up in episode 20 ? That I started actually going, oh, okay, this is starting to make a little more sense. I don't understand what the heck the Liberation Army is doing, but at least now I understand where the Liberation Army thing came from. I think if you have this whole situation where you are investigating a group and you don't explain what the group is until after the investigation's been going on, there's a problem with your storytelling. So let's just get out of the way. Very stupid way of lining all this stuff up. I have to admit, it was funny because at some point I actually tweeted out saying, is my feeling of being absolutely confused as to what's going on because they swap these arcs? Like, can somebody confirm that my confusion is warranted here? But at any rate, like I said, besides the whole thing with Endeavor and his family, that segment of that arc I really liked. I think the sister, I think Fuyumi, I want her to smile. Like, we must protect Fuyumi's smile. I felt so bad for her. She was trying so hard to get her family back together. It was a little bit of a shock to find out that Shoto had a brother, and apparently he died as a result to the negligence and everything that Endeavor was doing. Endeavor's story has always been fascinating to me because it is essentially the Vegeta story. It is the story about the bad guy that is trying to be good. Like, he's trying to, not that he wants everybody to forgive him, but he's just trying to be a better person. And the difficulty that he faces in people trusting him to be better. And the fact that some will never forgive. And it was kind of sad in the end. It almost felt like he was going to leave them, but it implies the idea that he's going to let the mother, he's wanting the mother to come back to the family. He keeps recalling this dream that he had where everybody in the family was having fun and eating dinner together, and he wasn't there. And it kept hitting on that to eventually he says, do everything you can to welcome your mom back home. I won't be here. I'm going to move my stuff. And she's like, well, where are you going? He says, I'm still going to be here. So I think it's implying the idea that he's just going to just make a room off in the corner and just not, he's going to be there to keep them. Because that was the thing I was saying, is like, you can't leave the house. You've already pretty much shown that somebody knows where you live and they will harm your family. So he still technically should stay on the premises. He's just not going to interact with them. I think that's what they're implying. I really liked the story of Endeavor's arc. I think that was great. Continues the story of, Shoto and what their family is basically facing with him. I thought the little segment with Ryukyu and Ochako and all the other girls doing their little training sessions was fine. The Nomu thing was interesting. I don't know that I grasped the whole ordeal, but essentially they were implying the idea that, yeah, the Nomus are these biologically enhanced beings that can have more than one quirk, but they also implied the fact that they need a base. And what they ended up bringing into the situation was somebody that Eraserhead and Speaker knew from back when they were in school, that they all wanted to create a agency together, and eventually he died. And they're implying that this guy, which was, I don't remember his name, I'm sorry, the gate opener guy that was working alongside Tomura, he was essentially where they used that man as a base. And so they were trying to tap into him to get information out of him, which led to them basically having to talk to their dead friend who they knew was gone. And that was kind of really screwed up. But it technically does imply going in the future that, yeah, the Nomus that they fight could be their own. They were talking about the fact that they were watching the school so closely because they were looking for candidates to use as Nomu, which is really screwed up. And I'm wondering if that will come into play sometime later. Like, the entire time I've been watching this, I'm just waiting for Endeavor to die, because it seems like they're flagging the heck out of Endeavor. And maybe they'll have a Nomu Endeavor or something like that in the future. But yeah, that was the thing that I was getting from that entire Endeavor arc in the Liberation Army segment, was like, wow, they're really painting it out as if the only way his family is ever going to forgive him is if he dies. Like, that's going to be the turning point for him, is his sacrifice will be the thing that finally gets them to go acknowledge him as a father. And it's going to be crazy. We'll see. It seems like the goal right now is to really kind of take out all the pillars that have been holding up them this entire time so that they can come out to the forefront. But the last one, obviously, there is Endeavor. So yeah, going into the My Villain Academia arc, like I said, it should have been earlier. It's fine. We'll go with it. But yeah, they essentially, like I said, they've established this group as the Liberation Army, which is this group that is essentially seeking out the liberation of people to use their quirks. So what it essentially is they acknowledge the fact that at some point quirks started appearing. People were seeking to control the quirks and put restrictions on it, while at the same time this liberation group was seeking to, that was led by this Destro, was seeking to essentially allow everybody that has quirks to use them as they wish. This led to creation of this big organization, the Liberation Army, and eventually they went against the government and they were destroyed. And this, apparently, I think it's the son of Destro, is now seeking to essentially carry the torch, and he's continuing on his legacy. And I don't know why. This is the part that doesn't make any sense to me. As we're opening up this My Villain Academia arc, and we have essentially Tomura is trying to seek the approval of this doctor that worked for All for One. And as he's seeking the approval of him and fighting this guy that essentially was, one of his henchmen, this doctor wants him to beat him in order to gain his approval. As they're doing that, the Liberation Army captures one of their men and says, hey, I want you to come here. We're going to take you out. And we have a hostage. I don't understand this, because it seems like the way that this guy is pointing it out is that the government has failed to take down the League of Villains, so they're going to take them out. I don't know. That's what I understand. The Liberation Army, where's the enemy of my enemy is my friend? Why, if you're seeking the liberation of quirks, are you going after the League of Villains? Why wouldn't you be going after the government? I haven't been able to, and somebody could probably explain this in the comments or something. I know that they specifically, in this last episode, specifically say that they want twice. And they want twice because he can essentially create a replacement of Destro. But it didn't announce that until later on. The whole narrative before then was, again, I think they said something like, since the government can't handle you, we'll take care of you. And it's like, well, why do you care that the government can't handle the League of Villains? Your goal is to liberate quirks. Why are you going after these guys? There's no point to it. So again, it might just be the whole thing was a ruse and they just want twice. But why would they say that behind closed doors that they want to take out the villains and not that they want twice? It doesn't make any sense to me. I don't know. That's like everything else. It's just the narrative with the whole previous arc and this arc is just doesn't feel cohesive. And I don't know if that's because they swap things around or what, but it's fine though. Like I said, because we got some Toga. So yeah, as they went to this one location to fight the Liberation Team or Liberation War, they find out that 90% of this entire town is basically warriors of the Liberation in hiding. I think they nest at some point. They have like hundreds of thousands of people across Japan that are all in hiding, waiting to leap out. That's why Hawks was working to basically inform the heroes of what's going on. Their hope is that since this guy that they're trying to fight is obsessed with Tomura, that the moment that they get there, when he wakes up, he's going to come and just destroy everything in that town, which they did pretty much have at some point in the future part of this whole segment. They had this news report saying that the city was destroyed. So obviously where they're at now is before this news report that this entire city is going to get leveled. And it's probably going to be because of this. But yeah, they're fighting in there. Everything's going crazy. It does seem like they're pointing out that their skills, their quirks are evolving. Specifically with Toga at some point when she takes on the form of Ochako, this girl was like, this lady that's actually fighting her is like, well, I know that based on the reports, you can only assume their identity. There's nothing else. But, boom, she uses the gravity abilities, and so not only did she take on the form of Uraka, she took on, or Uravity, she took on her ability as well, her quirk. So that's kind of an interesting little, kind of overpowered in the sense there. So, which I'm fine with. Toga's great. But it did get into her past and everything, which was, again, not as interesting as I was hoping would be, but it was still great to get more information about Toga. Because just based on her character design, her goofiness, I really do love her as a character. Obviously, she's always had this sense of loving things and wanting things to herself. And the thing that she's kind of pointing out during her, entire history is this idea that she just had this desire. It was almost like a vampiric desire to the things that she cherished to draw the blood from them. And this became an obsession that everybody around her was disgusted by. And obviously, the Liberation Army was, claiming that they'd want to support that. Again, don't get the whole reason why they're attacking the villains. But yeah, she eventually uses this ability, floats them all up to the sky, and then releases them, and they all come plummeting to their deaths. And this is like, essentially, I think that's probably the reason why a lot of people were pretty hyped about this particular arc, is this is really where we're getting to the point where it seems like the writer is a little bit more okay with killing people. And it's not been something that's been in the series all that much, just because the heroes aren't supposed to kill people. And to finally have an arc where it's solely focusing on the villains, seems like they're a little bit more okay with having the storyline, essentially have kill or be killed. And so that's what they essentially have here is, Toga is dropping a bunch of people to their deaths. You have Tomura's over here, and he's basically swiping his hand and knocking out an entire group of people into dust, which again is the advancement of his ability, as he doesn't even have to touch people anymore. He literally waves his hand. I think he touches one person, and everybody behind him all get turned to ashes, which is kind of scary. And yeah, Dabi seeing this is obviously seeing that, hey, I should be able to advance too, so what can I do? Yeah, and then the episode ends with Twice finding Toga inside of this shed that she hid herself inside, and yeah, he's kind of distraught. He's always been kind of the goofy, I don't know, Deadpool / overly emotional character. So he's obviously super distraught about what's happened to Toga. And at some point, you kind of see this other guy that is apparently has the ability to turn things that are the size of humans into puppets. And so he makes like a whole bunch of Twices to go after him. And yeah, like I said, that's what the point where it's kind of acknowledging the idea that Twice's ability will be very crucial to them in the future, because he's able to create duplicates of himself that seemingly don't have his mentality. So it notes the fact that he had created a bunch of himself before, and it came to a point where they're all fighting, and eventually one of them almost killed him. So it kind of gives the idea that the duplicates he makes have their own autonomousness, And so I'm guessing their desire is to take the ability from Twice and give it to Destro to let Destro revive, I guess. And again, I am assuming that was the real intentions of why they went off to the League of Villains. It wasn't necessarily because the government wasn't handling the League of Villains and they had to handle them, but more so that they were always after Twice. So yeah, we'll see what happens with that in the next episode. Like I said, honestly, the last 9 or so episodes have been pretty meh for me, and this is kind of an interesting... I'm liking shifting to the League of Villains to give a different perspective on the story going forward, because like I said, yeah, technically, honestly, if you ask my opinion, I do think the idea of the Liberation Army being this huge, massive, what they say, I think like over 100,000 members across the continent is a big, significant threat, and I'm assuming that's going to turn into a huge war. But, and that was the whole reason why that Endeavor was taking Deku and Shoto and Bakugo under his wing, is that Hawks is telling him, look, you got to train these kids. These kids need to get strong fast because this Liberation Army is huge and we're not going to have enough men. So these students are our future. So I am interested to see that war. I'm sure it's going to be really freaking crazy. I'm also kind of assuming that there's a possibility that while the Liberation Army does not want to use the League of Villains as their allies, it might turn into a thing where the heroes have to use the League of Villains as their allies. I wouldn't doubt that, and that would be an interesting kind of twist to have in the later parts. Since the Liberation Army has already gone after the League of Villains, why can't we have that branch, that olive branch, or that truce, handed over the Isle just to get the League of Villains to aid them? But we'll see. Like I said, my biggest concern right now is I don't know that they're going to finish this villain arc in 4 episodes, and if they don't, then does that mean that we're going to have to wait for a movie to get the conclusion? I don't know. I don't know how long exactly this League of Villains story is. So with that said, that's my thoughts. Hope you guys enjoyed my video. If you did, leave a like down below. Comment. Let me know what you thought of these series of episodes. Do you agree with me? Disagree with me? Subscribe if you haven't already. Share this video if you can. And y'all take care.